All right, Republican Nikki Haley has officially launched her 2024 presidential campaign.
That's right. The former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador is the first Republican to formally challenge former President Trump for the GOP nomination. She emphasized in a speech today the need for a new generation of leadership in Charleston.
We're ready to move past the stale ideas and faded names of the past. And we are more than ready for a new generation to lead us into the future.
For more on all of this, let's bring in Robert Costa and Major Garrett. Robert is CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent. He's there in Charleston, where Haley just spoke. And Major is, of course, our CBS News chief Washington correspondent. Good afternoon to both of you. Robert, I'm going to start with you. Errol and I both heard those words about faded names of the past. What else did we hear from Nikki Haley today?
It's good to be with you this afternoon. Here in Charleston, the former UN ambassador Nikki Haley outlined her themes for her presidential campaign, casting herself as a new leader for the Republican Party. But she also has many ties to the Republican past. This is someone who was elected as part of that Tea Party wave in 2010, campaigned alongside Mitt Romney in 2012, then joined the Trump administration. So it's going to be very interesting to follow in the coming months. Can she really cut a profile in this race as a new voice, someone who's bringing the Republican Party in a new generational direction, even as she amplifies many traditional Republican positions on the issues?
And Major, who might Nikki have to compete against in addition to former President Trump? We know that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is being discussed widely. He's not announced an intention to run yet. You also have former Vice President Mike Pence, who may be in the mix. So for Haley, at the moment, what do her prospects look like?
Well, she's polling at about 1%. That is by no means determinative of where she's going to end up, but she's got a long way to go to work herself into the conversation of those at the top of the Republican list challenging President Trump. And to pick up on Bob's point, a couple of lines in Nikki Haley's speech stood out to me. She said as part of her approach to new governing and new approaches, she would advocate mental competency tests for any politician over the age of 75. Let me say that again. A mental competency test for any politician over the age of 75. Why does that catch in my ear? Former President Trump is 76 years old. So Nikki Haley is essentially saying, of the available politicians right now, President Trump ought to take a mental competency test. That was a line that stuck in with me. She also said America is not past its prime. Only its political leaders are. That would have to include former President Trump. So what Nikki Haley, to Bob's point, is trying to do is not only say she's a better alternative, but to say the existing available alternatives, and there's only one, that's former President Trump, are basically either too old or not capable of handling the test of our time. And that's what she's put before other Republicans. She's got a long way to go in South Carolina and nationwide to build up her recognition, but the only way you can start to do that is to get in the race.
Well, I want to bring Robert into this conversation because we're seeing all these pictures, or our viewers are seeing all these pictures of Haley and Trump together. She had previously said that she would not run if President Trump ran. And as Major pointed out, she really took a lot of shots at the former president and his age. What specifically changed for her, Robert?
Power can change people. She had the opportunity to serve in the Trump administration. She then said she would not go against him should he choose to run again for the nomination. She changed her mind on Trump after the 2016 campaign. She changed her mind about running this time around. She is someone who has always been ambitious. She was very young when she started to rise in South Carolina politics, got elected governor at a young age in 2010, and she embodied, in a sense back then, the Tea Party movement. I remember covering in 2010 the endorsement of Sarah Palin. That was a big moment for Nikki Haley back in that election cycle to show that she had the Tea Party bona fides that would bring her across the finish line in the gubernatorial race. And she is someone who has always been popular with the GOP suburban voter, the business community here in South Carolina. But she's also saying that she wants to be a candidate who could reach out to the Trump base in the Republican Party, but not be fully defined by them, to also be defined on her own terms. but it is going to be politically complicated for her because she has never been part of a particular bloc wholeheartedly in the past decade, partly with Trump, sometimes with the Republican establishment, sometimes leaning one direction or the other. She had a controversial pastor give the invocation today, a pastor who John McCain, back in his 2008 campaign, rejected that endorsement. So you're going to see her make a pitch to evangelical voters, religious voters, but she's also going to say to the Trump voter, I'm a conservative, give me a shot. Don't necessarily go back to those, as she called them, faded brands. And as Major astutely said, that could be a reference to not only President Biden, the incumbent president, but to her former boss.
And Bob, you just wonder, though, if Haley will be able to have it both ways, right? I mean, both someone who's fresh and young, but also has the experience. Major, to you, we heard Haley mention the police, schools, illegal immigration, and voter ID. And fellow South Carolinian Senator Tim Scott is considering a 2024 bid. How might his popularity impact Haley's?
Well, that would certainly be a competitor that Nikki Haley would have to be aware of. It's worth pointing out that in the interesting and evolving contours of Republican politics in South Carolina and the ethnic dimension thereof, Nikki Haley, the first woman of color elected governor of South Carolina, she appointed Tim Scott to the Senate to replace Jim DeMint, putting Tim Scott in the United States Senate in 2013. So they are allies in that respect. Tim Scott is looking at the presidential campaign. It's hard to know just how aggressively he is looking into that. Many people I've talked to in the Republican Party think he's positioning himself to be on the ticket for the eventual Republican nominee, so he might not challenge Nikki Haley directly in South Carolina. But it's worth remembering this. The last time Republicans went to a primary in South Carolina, they didn't have one in 2020, was 2016. Then candidate Trump carried 43 of 46 counties. The only other Republican to carry counties was Marco Rubio, endorsed by Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley came on the Trump train. Now she's clearly off of it.
All right, Robert Costa, Major Garrett, thank you both so much.